Hi, this is Hank reporting from Kyiv, and this is my update on Russian-Ukrainian war. Let's see what happened around Ukraine in the last 24 hours. Budanov talks about 2025. Festival of Hypocrisy. When the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. Modern Kyiv Fashion Week. Interview with the Commander-in-Chief. I tried to track interviews of several key figures of this war, and in the top 5 of course is General Kirill Budanov, head of the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. This is a small intro why I always wait for his interviews and study them carefully. First, he is consistent. It is difficult to get any information from him, and this is noticeable in all interviews, just as it is not easy for journalists to get some sensational statement from General Budanov. It would be strange if an intelligence officer told you everything at once, and the information that he gives to me is clear. I see a line without any cardinal deviations in one direction or another. What he says is based on the current situation as a rule, coincides with what is happening in the near future. Here it should be noted that he said it will all over soon before the start of our counteroffensive in 2023, when unfortunately we didn't manage to go far enough through Russian defense lines in the south to where we planned. To this question, General Budanov answered that he could not reveal the details of why this happened, but the entire assessment was made based on the balance of power and statistical forecasts. I regret that a miracle didn't happen, but I accept this answer with understanding. War is a complicated thing. Secondly, he appeals to figures that apparently only he and perhaps a few others like President Zelensky and Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi have. Of course, the head of the intelligence service is obliged to have such information, which is not available anywhere else. And here comes the most interesting part. In yesterday's interview, General Budanov gave the following assessment. At the beginning of next summer, Russia will begin to experience an acute shortage of resources, and he explained that this doesn't mean that Russia will immediately fall apart, or the people will finally rise up against the Tsar, or they will understand that they are committing a terrible crime. No, it means that their goals and appetites will change due to amount of resources that will remain at that time. This assessment is based on statistics, which I believe show metrics of economic data, Russia's profits and expenses, the rate of destruction and restoration of military equipment, and other data that they will not tell us. So let's remember, in 9 months there may be a turning point. Here General Budanov emphasized an interesting detail, which he had already spoken about earlier but in different words. It sounds like this. We need to understand that we are fighting not only for our own money but also for the money of our numerous partners, and Russia is fighting only for its own money. We can say that we have, say, 20 sources of financial and technical support from partners, and if, for example, we go into red, then we can get another loan which will then might be restructured by our partners afterwards. Conventionally speaking, we have a credit line. They can lend us another $50–100 billion, which we will pay back in 20 years and possibly at the expense of reparations, which Russia will definitely pay at the end of this war. And the Russians have only their income and savings, and war is very expensive. You see how much a big war requires. According to the customs declaration, in January of this year, Russia officially bought $29,210,000 in cash from Rwanda to pay for its purchases where sanctions do not allow it. Pay attention to this figure. $29 million is a lot of money. For me, for your family, for any city, but for a country with 100 or 140 million people, a nuclear superpower as they call themselves, about 10 missiles for the Patriot system costs approximately the same. There are 2 of them in Kyiv as far as I know. This means that Russia is experiencing huge financial problems which it is trying so hard to hide. So let's remember, in 9 months, at the beginning of the summer 2025, we will see changes. Fingers crossed. Furthermore, General Budanov confirmed that the main tool for working with the Russian military has always been, is and will be the money. Russians are happy to sell their secrets and information about upcoming terrorist attacks and movements. Without double meaning, just for money. We give them dollars, which they love so much, and they give us the secrets of their country, which they basically don't care about. Look at the Kursk region. In a month, they haven't tried very hard to get their lands back. This is so weird. We all know that Russians have the huge amount of land. They occupy such a large territory that is neither populated nor developed. They're not interested in building their cities, but they are interested in destroying ours, and this is so strange. Honestly, I try very hard to take any news calmly, but this news made me angry and threw me off balance for the whole day. Suddenly, Venice Film Festival, a seemingly respectable event, presented a film by Anastasia Trofimova, a so-called journalist from Russia, which she shot in the occupied territory of Ukraine, traveling with Russian soldiers, with the occupiers. And as you can see from this article titled in Reuters, they got their voice at this film festival. How perverted is this? I always get angry when Russian weapons kill our people, but it is when our partners or representatives of some humanitarian organizations whitewash Russians, say that not everything is so clear and try in every possible way to show their human face. It just feels sick. This documentary, as it turns out, was shot for $400,000, which was paid for by Canadian government. Damn it, Canada. Canada, which supplies us weapons, armor and equipment to resist the Russians, and the same Canada gives money to the Russians to make a movie about their experiences while Canadian weapons are shooting at them. This world is just crazy and cynical. The UCC, Ukrainian-Canadian Congress organization, initiated an investigation into this situation and demands to find out why Canadian taxes were spent on the creation of Russian propaganda. We must give credit to Putin's propagandists, who deceived everyone so subtly that it deserves applause. Not praise because this is complicity in a crime, but applause. They played on their feelings of tolerance and humanity so masterfully that they simply received $400,000 to film war criminals at the scene of the crime and show it in Venice. Simply surreal. I want this kind of money to show the real situation from the side of those who defend their homes from invaders. And speaking of hypocrisy, I want to show this video. The happy man in the IAEA jacket is Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. In this video, he came to Russia to the Kursk nuclear power plant to check how safe it is now. You don't even need to explain anything, just look at his body language and behavior. This man also went as a part of a delegation to the Ukrainian Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which has been occupied by Russian troops since 2022. For comparison, Kursk is on Russian territory, no one has occupied it or damaged it. Zaporizhzhia NPP is located in the Ukrainian territory occupied by Russians. It is heavily mined, weapons are stored there, and Russians recently set fire to the cooling tower to stimulate the possibility of a nuclear disaster. They also regularly say that bloodthirsty Ukraine is shooting at its own nuclear power plant for some reason. I tried to explain this situation as simply as possible, but it's far from simple. Rafael Grossi didn't see the violation in the occupied territory and went to hug Russians. Jesus, you could just at least not hug them, sir. A simple formal greeting is enough. I cannot draw a conclusion from these two pieces of news. The world is hypocritical. I couldn't resist this news and I want to say a few words. There is an opposition in Russia. What they call opposition is a strange format in which Russians oppose Putin but do not really oppose the war. Yulia Navalny, the wife of the former famous oppositionist Alexei Navalny, who was killed in a Russian prison, is now in the West and actively tours the media. I saw her performance in the States and heard of the speech that she gave after her husband's murder. Also, I feel sorry for her as a person, and her husband probably didn't deserve to die in a Russian prison like Ukrainian prisoners of war are dying now, right now, literally. But at the same time, Yulia talks about the fight against Putin and never mentions Ukraine. She doesn't talk about the elephant in the room. That is, she literally just skirts about the issue of ongoing terrible war, but talks about the bad Putin, his entourage, corruption, and blah blah blah. So recently spoke at a forum in Slovenia, and I want to discuss this. In this photo you see another Russian woman, Evgenia Chirikova. She is a Russian activist and oppositionist, and she has been living in Estonia for 9 years. Evgenia made perhaps the most accurate analysis of the speech of Yulia Navalny, who claims to represent her country on the international stage. Yeah, I'm now analyzing two speeches of two Russian oppositionists. Quote by Evgenia: "It is impossible to talk about Russia now without mentioning Ukraine. If I are to demand a strategy towards Russia from the West, then only in the context of Ukraine's victory. Without this necessary condition, there can be no future for not only beautiful Russia, but also simply a normal Russia. In my opinion, it is, to put it mildly, a big mistake for Russian opposition politician not to mention Ukraine and not to express at least sympathy for the victims of the most brutal Russian missile attacks on Poltava, Lviv, and other Ukrainian cities. End of quote. This is certainly a sober thought, and I'm glad that there are people who share my point of view. You may not like Ukraine, and you're not obliged to like Ukraine in general, but this is a question of global security, global balance, a question of democracy's victory over dictatorship, a question of whether world courts, laws, and rules will work, or whether they can be ignored and people can simply be killed as in dark ages without trial or investigation. This is more than just Ukraine. Here was the following quote from Yulia Navalny's speech that was subjected to sharp criticism. We will also find those who talk about the urgent need to decolonize Russia. It is supposedly necessary to divide our too large country into a couple of dozen small and safe states. However, the decolonizers cannot explain why people with a common background and cultural context should be artificially divided. End of Yulia's quote and Evgenia's quote. Here it should be noted that Putin began an aggressive war against Ukraine precisely because Ukraine decided to be an independent state and get out from under Russian influence to join democratic countries. Russia has been cruelly destroying Ukraine for the third year in a row, precisely because Ukraine dares to resist colonization. Russia's war against Ukraine is demonstratively cruel and genocidal, because Russia is thereby showing the peoples that are part of the Russian Federation what will happen to them if they decide to develop independently. Yevgenia writes, and damn it, I agree with this. This is exactly what the Russians themselves need to talk about. It is not bloodthirsty Ukraine that is trying to seize country with a larger territory and population, but Putin and his government are the root of the problem. Without Ukraine's victory, Russia will never be a normal country, safe for the world around it and the peoples that inhabit it. And for Ukraine to win, adequate military assistance and support of the Ukrainian army and Russian voluntary units in the armed forces of Ukraine, which are in the front lines fighting Putinism, are needed. And here is a reference to the Russian Volunteer Corps, which can be called the only real Russian opposition. I saw these guys in Kyiv and then I felt a little uncomfortable being there. I thought a lot about my feelings, and at the same time I came to the conclusion that people should be judged by their actions. Yevgenia's speech deserves respect. The fact that Yevgenia understands and speaks about the need for military support for Ukraine, not actions with flashlights and silent protests at the vote, but real actions. This is what Yulia Navalny and other Russian so-called media oppositionists do not understand. I really want as many people as possible on the other side to listen to their fellow citizens who are fighting first and foremost to build a normal country at home, not only for Ukraine. The largest fashion event took place in Kyiv, Kyiv Fashion Week, where as always new lines of fashionable clothes were shown, which will possibly be sold all over the world. Now there is a certain demand for made in Ukraine, and this is a great incentive for our people to create more and better. The Andres Moskin brand made a collection show with the help of veterans wounded in battle. In my understanding, veterans are still old grandfathers and grandmothers who survived the Second World War. And now we have veterans aged 20, and this is so unusual for me, and I'm sure for many others too. Therefore, a fashion show with the participation of beautiful young people who were wounded in war, lost limbs, but did not lose their spirit, this is exactly what we need now. Inclusivity at its best. I want us all to accept and get used to the fact that there are many people with disabilities around us, and we should take care of them and accept them as equals. Commander of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Alexander Syrsky, gave an interview to CNN, and of course the main question was the operation in Kursk region of Russia, where the Armed Forces of Ukraine currently control about 1,300 square kilometers of territory and about 100 villages. The official answer of the general is, "We moved the fighting to the enemy's territory so that the enemy would feel what we feel every day." Thus, this expression confirms the statement of President Zelensky that this large-scale operation on the territory of Russia is precisely the creation of safe buffer zone that Putin spoke about, only from the other side. I will leave a link to the original interview in English under the video so that you understand, and here I will only briefly describe my impressions of what was said. General Syrsky is responsible for the defense of Kyiv at the beginning of the invasion in 2022. General Syrsky is responsible for the liberation of Kharkiv region in the fall of 2022, when we liberated a huge area in the northeast of the country. And also, General Syrsky was born in Russia and lived there for almost 20 years. This is certainly an interesting moment in his biography. Since I a priori do not trust the news, I need confirmation before I believe what is said publicly. Therefore, I tried to analyze his actions and statements in order to understand what is being sold to me. When General Syrskyi was promoted to Commander-in-Chief, replacing the popular and charismatic Valery Zaluzhny, many were happy. I'm not a military and I do not know how things going on inside, but judging by the fact that Syrskyi has carried out at least 3 large-scale and successful operations so far, I can say that he is certainly a worthy commander. And again, I'm glad that he doesn't make loud statements, but rather briefly and clearly explains what is happening. Unfortunately, the week was rather mournful despite some of our achievements. I probably won't talk about the huge exploded Russian ammunition depot because there were already thousands of them, and every attack on our civilians has also already turned into dry statistics. In the photo you see a family from Lviv, and you've probably already seen them on the news. This is something that can be said to touch a nerve and to make you pick out faces and names from these terrible statistics. The Basilevich family was hiding behind 2 walls as we all do during Russian missile attacks. Father Yevgeny went to the apartment to get water, and at the moment the missile hit the part of the house where his family was hiding. 3 daughters and his wife died, and Yevgeny miraculously survived. It is physically painful to watch rescuers helping him, and in the background they are pulling the bodies of his girls from under the rubble. I had to tell this story here and say that such stories happen every day, literally every day. They are just not all public. If you believe that there is justice in this world, then please support Ukraine now. We can celebrate a holiday during the day and go to work or cafe, and at night just die from a Russian missile. The day before yesterday I woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of a Shahed flying above my house in Kyiv, and it sobers me up from the thought that it can be sort of safe here. Thank you to everyone who is with us. We must win this war and rebuild what was destroyed. I'm currently working on getting this channel advertised on YouTube so that more people can hear my thoughts, which may be different from what the big media says. If you want to support this channel, then all the links are below this video. This was my update on the Russian-Ukrainian war for day number 928. Take care, and I hope to see you tomorrow.